The encoding, decoding model and standpoint theory are both concerned with how culture and communication produce knowledge through acts of knowing, meaning-making, interpretation, and resistance. Stuart Hall's theory focuses on how meanings are circulated through processes of encoding and decoding, while standpoint theory, developed by theorists like Nancy Hartstock, Patricia Hill Collins, and Sandra Harding, contends that knowledge emerges from the material and social positions of the knowers themselves. In different ways, these two theories help us understand that intercultural knowledge production occurs not as a neutral or equitable exchange, but as a negotiation among differently positioned participants who bring distinct perspectives and agencies to shared communication encounters. Hall thought of meaning as knowledge production through negotiated communication. We refer to this theory most often as the encoding-decoding model, and you can read more about it in his 1980 essay, Culture, Media, and Language. Hall's theory challenged linear sender-message-receiver models of communication by producing an alternative framework, one that took into account the fact that message producers and message consumers are not the same and do not have equivalent codes. Hall said that messages are predominantly encoded by producers who hold dominant ideological orientations, and then decoded by audiences according to their own cultural and social contexts, which are often far from dominant. Hall identified three primary ways audiences will receive or read a message. 1. Preferred reading. This is where the receiver interprets the message as intended, reproducing the producer's ideological stance in their own mind. They want me to believe this, and I do believe this. 2. Negotiated reading. The receiver understands and partly accepts the intended meaning, but adapts it based on local or personal contexts. I understand what they want me to believe, and I sort of believe this in some cases. 3. Oppositional reading. The receiver actively resists the intended meaning and reinterprets it to form an alternative ideological standpoint. They want me to believe this, and I do not believe this. Instead, I believe that. The model views communication as a site of ideological struggle. Intercultural communication exemplifies the struggle. Audiences arrive at the same media artifact with different cultural codes. The resulting interpretations, then, are not replications of the original message, but new hybrid forms of intercultural understanding. Standpoint theory views knowledge as situated or embodied. The theory contends that all knowledge is situated. That is, knowledge is shaped by the material, social, and cultural position of the knower. Some positions are dominant. Some are subordinate or marginalized. Those who occupy marginalized standpoints can often perceive social relations more comprehensively than those at the center of power because they must understand both dominant and subordinate worldviews in order to navigate them. Thus, standpoint theory suggests that if you really want to know about the world, you're better off asking marginalized groups rather than depending on the perspectives of dominant society. Key concepts in this theory include 1. Situated knowledge. This holds that all knowledge claims are partial and embedded in context. People, even and perhaps especially experts, are inherently limited by the cultural perspectives they are already familiar with. 2. Epistemic privilege. Marginalized groups can produce critical insights into power relations because of their social position. They must navigate the world from multiple perspectives, while members of dominant groups can largely ignore alternative ways of knowing. 3. Strong objectivity. Coined by Harding, this refers to knowledge that deliberately accounts for positionality bias and actively centers marginalized standpoints, thus achieving a more reflexive and complete form of objectivity. This theory makes intercultural communication not just an exchange of meanings, but a process through which power and perspective shape what counts as knowledge in the first place. Although these two theories arise from different intellectual traditions, they complement each other well. Each theory is concerned with how information moves between people. Where Hall focuses on how meanings circulate, standpoint theory focuses on who produces and legitimates knowledge. When cultural expressions like films, social media, rituals, performances, when they travel across cultural borders, they function as encoded texts embedded with cultural assumptions. Audiences, situated in their own standpoints, decode these texts through frameworks shaped by history, language, and cultural ideology. The gap between encoding and decoding, the tension between intended and interpreted meaning, these are flashpoints where intercultural knowledge emerges. For example, an indigenous filmmaker's work might encode symbols of sovereignty and historical trauma that resonate within one community but are decoded differently by global audiences who are unfamiliar with that cultural code. The intercultural dialogue that follows, the commentary, disagreements, arguments, critiques, overreactions, underreactions, reinterpretations, those are all components of collective intercultural knowledge production.